Today we have patch 23, October 13th. Let's see what the new update, and again, it almost feels like a rebalancing of a couple of things that means for the game. And before I do go over that, this is a lighter set of patch notes. Previously, it feels like we're looking at least three times almost the content to go through when we are going over the patch notes. So again, I don't mind if we get updates that actually don't have a lot of content, but are smoothing things out, prepping for future content. So now, first we have some bug fixes we have for allies. So now for customization, apparently there were some issues with scrapping an ally station, so that's fixed. And for the Settler Forager, we got Gramps. Apparently there was still some issues with people receiving quests from him. So now it's fine. You should be able to receive whatever quest from him daily. Um, on to arts and graphics. There were apparently multiple issues with the straitjackets, apparently on allies, and if you were using a Gauss rifle and the straitjacket, seems like a very specific issue that I'm not sure if anybody's really noticed. Now for the, again, apparel, we have the Vaultec University baseball cap. Apparently was incorrectly shown, I guess, a different logo or a different color. Now it's appropriately displaying right thing. Enemies, we need we need to keep a lookout for some of these things because I never noticed this. Apparently, the way I'm understanding this patch note, saying enemies addressed an issue that could cause normal mutant hounds to incorrectly display glowing mutant hound visual effects. So a glowing mutant hound to me I think should already be emitting some sort of aura, at least of light. If this is a visual effect, does that mean a normal mutant hound was starting to go Super Saiyan and it was just starting to glow? Or I've never noticed that. Again, some of these patch notes that I read through, sometimes I'm like, how did we not see this ourselves? Um, but I guess that could have been under specific circumstances. I don't know. There were some other lighting issues in terms of visual effects, but that was specifically for Hornwright Estate's upper levels. For animations for the lunchbox, again, never really noticed this. They'll appropriately play the animations when you're in power armor. Uh, I also never noticed this either. Correct. So for a perk, the bow before me, the corrected overlapping art that again I never noticed that. Symptomatic. If anybody's been using that, now you have the correct animation being played when somebody's actually using it. Under Armor, Secret Service Under Armor no longer clips through armor or other apparel the player has equipped. And for some more visual things, the Blood Eagle paint will now display correctly a suppressor mod for the handmade. Never noticed that. I guess I could actually swap around my skins from like last year and rewards we got from even like Nuclear Winter. Might have to use some of those soon. Moving on to camp and workshops, we have the Blood Eagle Nest. It says players can no longer path through the Blood Eagle's nest in its destroyed state. Never noticed that either. And then apparently, for talking about building in camps, blueprints, there was an issue that could result in an infinite loading spinner when attempting to create a blueprint. I think I kind of noticed that once when I was trying to blueprint something for Nuclear Winter, but don't know how, when they say infinite, does that mean you're just in a loading screen where you have to crash out? Hopefully, nobody has to go through that again. Electron stations. Fix an issue that could allow players to build collectron stations that they have not unlocked. Again, I have not heard of this until now. It's like one of those things where I read, I'm just like, I don't understand how you could and do that. Like what circumstances? Like maybe you have to go to a workshop somehow and it just becomes available, and then maybe you blueprint it. I have no idea. Like some of these things that I read, I'm so curious to know how people find these out. Um, displays, lunchboxes no longer clip into display cases. I never even thought about displaying my lunchbox. I'm actually gonna have to do that now. Maybe I can put that into one of my displays in one of my new bases. Let's see, we have doors. The Nuka-Cola secret door now more effectively snaps door frames. I never actually tried placing mine. There's an exploit again. I don't know where some of these come up, but it says addressed an exploit related to blueprinting, and I don't know what that means. I'm not sure if that relates to anything in terms of the more creative building community. I don't know if the creative, let's say, building community in 76 is kind of taking a hit from this one. I have no idea. Um, like I've mentioned in the past, I I personally don't know how to merge or whatever fancy term I should use to imply more of a creative use as opposed to something more of an exploit. But I don't know if that has anything to do with that. Again, I'm gonna have to keep an eye out and see how some other people are reacting to this. And now for statues, apparently the animatronic Santa and Snowman that we've seen in the past had their cost kind of readjusted to match, I guess, the item itself as opposed to, I don't remember what it was costing, but now it makes more sense, I guess. A few other camp fixes between turrets, vending machines, and walls. Turrets should no longer attack neutral wandering merchant NPCs. I also hope that translates into turrets potentially targeting the NPCs during Radiation Rumble. Sometimes during Radiation Rumble, I've noticed it seems like the turrets start to target instead of the glowing ones over there. It'll attack maybe somebody that's over there helping. I don't know if that's related somehow, but we can hope. Vending machines, something about that nothing we would like to hear. I'm still curious to know if there are any vending machine shoes. I do hope that if there were, they were potentially patched. It has nothing to do with that. This is just placing your vending machines and counter pieces. That's fine. Wallpapers can now correctly be applied to wall variants that have windows. I actually never noticed. I feel like every time I've placed that, I've never had an issue. Wall decor will no longer clip into walls that have wallpaper applied. Yeah, the flying witch cutout. I'm pretty sure I just recently purchased that too, so I'm gonna have to work on my new camp, work on my spooky camp, and I don't know if I should do a maze. I don't know. There's a couple things I want to do. I have one more character that I can build on. I might be limited to what I have unlocked, but I could force myself to be a little creative in terms of maybe a maze slash jail slash dungeon of sorts. I don't know. Now that we have this new Halloween bundle purchased, I don't know. I could be a little more creative in terms of what I'm gonna do for a spooky kind of theme. But more on that soon. In terms of items, there have been multiple fixes. Things that I never noticed again. Apparently, you could sell, or you were not able to sell Yaguai meat to a vendor, but now they'll give you caps for it. The hazmat suit, again, from the area of Radiation Rumble, the Emmett Mountain um, location will have, sorry, the hazmat suit will be able to be repaired. I don't know, I guess there was an issue before. And now this is something that if this wasn't working, the endurance bonuses from Under Armour, if anybody's ever had that on, apparently it wasn't working before, but you can get +5 health per point of endurance. Forget which ones I have equipped on different characters, but I do know a couple of them do offer endurance, and if it wasn't working again, hopefully that's going to buff us up a little bit. Now for armor, players can now correctly apply mods to solar and thorn armor limb pieces. I'm still working my way to the point of getting my, Strangler Heart. I'm not even doing the solar thorn on the one character that I am trying to collect that, so I'll look more into that down the road. Now for an exploit, fix an exploit that could allow players to apply item mods without spending crafting materials under certain circumstances. I have no idea. I mean, realistically, it's that person saving like a few screws here and there. I mean, unless it's like a super exploit and they're somehow, I don't know, making multiple digits of resources through this process. I guess that's bad, but it doesn't seem like anything crazy. It's good that they fixed that. I just don't understand under certain circumstances. All right, so Flora, I feel like I've noticed this one firsthand. Fixed a case where previously harvested flora would incorrectly appear harvestable when revisiting the area. I think I've had that happen to not Strangler Bloom. What is it? Maybe even I have to think specifically. There's been a couple places that I tried to collect even violet flux, and it said that you could harvest it. You hit A few times, and then nothing would pop up. Headwear, there was a few headwear fixes. I'm not going to get into specifics. If you want to check into those, definitely look into the patch notes. It will be listed. Legendary weapons. So this is one thing that I'm happy that they finally fixed, and now we can worry about other things moving forward. Legendary weapons. Address an issue allowing weapons with certain legendary attributes to deal much higher damage than intended. So now that this is addressed, I'm curious to know how many people that had them and did not know that they had them think that they are getting a huge nerf to their weapons. Because not everybody knew what they had. If they did have, let's say, some sort of combination to their magic weapon. So now that that's addressed, it's not the only thing that's been kind of smoothed over. The instigating legendary attribute now correctly applies its damage bonus additively instead of multiplicatively. So now for this, I don't know how big of a nerf that's going to be. That sounds terrible. That sounds like if I was enjoying instigating pre-One Wasteland, and then after One Wasteland and recent patches, I was not enjoying it as much, not thinking it was as useful. Again, right now I haven't used it yet. I'm gonna have to check it out after this. But that sounds like instigating for my one character. It's gonna be the point where I'm gonna like not even use that character for any instigating. I haven't really used it for instigating. I just have that collection there. But it was a good kind of test to have different weapons. I don't know. I think I'm a little worried on that character because that I want to say that character might have almost every combination of, at least for melee, instigating, wing speed, most weapons that I thought were useful. Now again, if magic weapons were patched, that's going to be less useful to certain people that have maybe used some of those instigating combos. And now I understand that both of those are hand in hand. So now, not to dive too much into the magic weapons were, but if the other combinations are still unaffected by today's update, is it possible that they're going to get refined down the road too? Only because it seems like everything was like, okay, it's no longer this, it's this. Now everything is in an additive structure, which makes sense. Again, going back to what I was thinking about before, if they somehow bring out a 4-star or a 5-star into this game, there's somehow to add even more attributes, and we're starting to think of something like a Diablo experience. And now you're starting to hunt for even more roles, and you're hunting for larger set pieces. Maybe then it makes more sense to have a lot more things additive because, again, you can have two people right next to each other, and somebody could have a crazy roll that's kind of broken by all the math that it's doing, and the person next to them is just, overshadowed and then can't even get a hit in before something's one hit, let's just say. Okay, I can understand that. But also looking at how Diablo does things, if we're going to compare anything, that game quickly gets ridiculous, and then you need to up the difficulty. Then you need to challenge yourself. You have to start running different torments, stuff like that. I would be very encouraging some sort of scenario like that where maybe it gets fit into daily ops. Maybe we can crank the difficulty on daily ops, maybe something like that. I'd be somewhat interested in. But for now, us having our base, let's say DPS on a lot of things between this patch and recent patches, kind of being brought down. At lowered base DPS for people that are mid-game, end-game, and, the game for a year, 2 years since the beginning, anything like that. They're going to have their stuff, again, nerfed, if you want to call it that. And then the people that are new to the game are going to be in a totally different bracket trying to push more DPS as they level up. Things are scaling with them, which is good, but once they get past 50, to me, that's the interesting grind. And I'm not personally going to be in that bracket for too long because I currently have a character that I was using as a mule, and it was 50, and I went to 55, maybe, I don't even know, like an hour or so, maybe a little more. And I was using what is it, not exterminator, um, executioner, sorry, assault rifle, and I believe it was faster fire rate, and it was like a pretty good experience in terms of I was killing things pretty quickly, and then after doing a daily op for basically half an hour, I walked away with a bunch of XP, a bunch of ammo for that gun, other things, and it was a good experience in terms of how much experience I got. Again, that was rewarding, but the overall 50 to 55 was not bad. And now that's just using something that seems like more of a common drop, where I think some of these roles are going to be more useful. I think more people are going to start using things like um, the executioners. I think instigating might be a little less looked into. And again, these are all things that I do want to test out before I get too off track of what I'm trying to say here with these different balances to the game. So we're going to test some of that out. But for the rest of the notes, there's a couple different things that have been implemented, fixed that I'm happy. And before I even get into performance and stability, there was a few other items on the list. There was the mole miner pails, so now you can no longer drop, sell, or trade the empty ones. Technical data, which I think this is interesting, can no longer be dropped, sold, or traded. I, for a while, was collecting a bunch of technical data. It means now I got to turn all that in on multiple characters. I don't know if anybody was hoarding that. You're kind of stuck with them now until you take care of them all. Hopefully that's not too much of an issue. Weapons, the Cryolator with a crystallizing barrel mod no longer deals damage to the owner when firing at the ground or at objects that are very close. Had no idea. I personally never used that. Weapons, applying a Scorch Killer's receiver mod to a 45 SMG no longer results in a much faster fire rate than intended. I had no idea. Honestly, if I knew that somehow that was working, that could have made the SMG that much better. I'm not sure what sort of boost in fire rate they're talking about, but I can imagine people enjoying that. And then the last weapon on the list we have the Flatwoods Fletcher bow skin can now be applied to compound bows. That's fine. Everything looks good so far on that end. Performance and stability, I always love to see these. They're always something that as long as you're working on this, it could be a copy and paste. Some of them it almost seem like they are, but I'm happy to see kind of different wording. And again, I want to see client stability. I want to see service stability. I want to see performance always being a part of the updates. And I'm sure that they're always pushing for it regardless. First and foremost, we have client stability, fix an issue that can cause the game client to crash. Um, Actually, not just crashing here, and I do know this has already impacted a couple people. As of today, certain people cannot launch the game directly from Steam. So if we're talking about the game crashing, some people can't even get the game to start. I could imagine that being patched by hopefully tomorrow. Because sometimes these patches come out and it seems like it goes from a Tuesday to we can't even start the game. Let's just say, as an example, that's a pretty big issue. I can imagine them trying to fix that between a Wednesday, Thursday time frame. I'm sure there's also workarounds, but that's fortunate for anybody that has to go through that. That's frustrating. Daily Ops got a couple different This is here for loading, joining a daily op from the location where it takes place, and then attempting to exit. Now correctly removes the player from that daily op. And then we have performance, implemented a fix to help mitigate hitching that could occur while cycling through items in crafting menus. I've had that on a couple of my characters, not even the mule character that has a bunch of stuff on it. Server stability addressed several issues that could cause a server crash during normal gameplay. And then another server stability fixes server crash that could occur during combat. So again, the combat one, I don't think I've ever actually seen that one before. Which, to me, it's like, if people are going through these things, could this even be something we've gone through? We just never connected the dots. How many times I mean, me personally on stream, I've crashed during the Scorch Beast Queen. Multiple people have crashed during the Scorch Beast Queen. I don't know if that's related to this one, or if it has something to do with the event, if it has something to do with multiple, I mean, there's so many factors, that could be going on during that event. So hopefully this maybe applies to that. That's one less thing we have to worry about. There were some perks that were addressed, and we're going to be testing some of these out. So awareness, enemy resistance values that appear in VATS with the awareness perk card now correctly match the enemy's one wasteland adjusted resistances. So I guess that was collecting old stuff. Nerd Rage, this is we're going to have to figure out. Nerd Rage now correctly applies its damage bonuses additively instead of multiplicatively. So I'm kind of worried that that's going to take a huge toll on a bunch of those sets, bonuses in terms of how much they have stacking, because if you're looking at that as a percentage and now it's being additive, it's a huge jump. And if that's what it's supposed to be, now that it was correctly being applied, um, it's interesting that all these things are happening now, let's just say. Say correctly is an interesting terminology to use when I've been playing since beta. Like, oh, okay, you forgot to mention that a long time ago. But we do have potentially a buff to balance out how that's going to be impacted. Tenderizer. Targets now correctly take increased damage after being attacked by a player with the Tenderizer perk card equipped. Um, so again, if this was not working before, we should be noticing a buff. The only thing is, I maybe should mark this now. If this is Tenderizer, if Tenderizer is something that has a multiplicative kind of combo of numbers, uh, watch us in a future patch be looking at something saying, Tenderizer now correctly applies its damage bonuses, additively instead of multiplicatively. It's just going to say that. So we're going to have to clip that for a future post. I'm calling it now. Quests and events. There was some of these exploits always have me scratching my head to see who actually figures these out. Fix an exploit in which players could bypass a portion of daily ops uplink to access the signal repeater early. Okay. Somebody's just flying straight there somehow. I'm very curious to know what that even means. In trade secrets, the quest targets inside Hornwright State now point the player to the correct location instead of the elevator. So, never personally had that happen, but again, anything to smooth out, especially during like a quest and event, anything to smooth those things out sounds good. For sound, there was a fix for the classical jukebox. Sorry, the classic jukebox. The UI got some updates as well. Kind of pick out more of some key ones. Again, the link will be posted so you can check these out for yourself. So for one of the challenges, let's say, the Become Legendary, now it has the perk coin icon. So most of us got them activated because we logged in and everything, all our progress was grandfathered in and we were just instantly rewarded these things. Anybody that's newer to the game and looking at those challenges will kind of know, I guess, a little more of what they're getting. Most of us already missed all those. So now for the daily apps, I think I've had this one happen to me. It says, and addressed an issue that could cause the progress bar to stop updating when capturing the uplink during a daily ops uplink. I feel like there's been times that there was multiple of us, like let's say three or four of us on something, and it stopped. So I don't know if that was a visual glitch or if it was actually stopped, because it seemed like it kind of sped up right afterwards. So for something kind of related to nuclear winter, it says fix an inventory item transfer issue that could occur after switching to adventure mode from nuclear winter. Never had that happen. I do hope nobody else had to deal with that, but that is now fixed. There's a couple of map fixes over here, but unfortunately I don't see anything related to fast travel issues. Perk cards. Equip perk cards no longer visually overlap non-equipped perk cards when 9 or more are assigned to the same special category. I don't think I even have 9 on any of my. I have to see that. Maybe one of my characters does. I've never noticed that it's apparently overlapping the non-equipped ones. It just goes off the screen. That's a funny image I have of that. There's a few more, nothing too crazy. And that actually is going to be wrapping up Patch 23. Again, definitely lighter notes for today. And as I've mentioned, I wouldn't mind lighter notes really, as long as they're prepping for future content, which they mentioned they were. They're kind of doing stuff under the hood before we fully have things implemented. We will have the Mole Miner event soon, which I'm happy about. That'll be what, Thursday? But in terms of today's update, I still need to test out some instigating. I still need to test out what Nerd Rage does. I think instigating will be more of a direct test of what that does. Um, I do have, let's say, my character is being transitioned into a junkies build, high health, was going from a low health bolstering build, um, which that was taking advantage of Nerd Rage, but now as a junkies build, it won't be as much. So now this is going to make me start to test more of, let's say, junkies. I don't know if junkies are going to be more of the new meta or how people are going to go about that. Again, if instigating took too much of a hit, my collection might just start collecting dust. And as for some of the other updates, I'm happy to see things fixed. I'm not going to criticize anything, like say that it's, oh, this is too light of an update. Listen, as long as they're fixing stuff, that's all I want to hear. I think sometimes we add too much and then we have to take a few steps back to patch that. Or not just a hot fix, but then the next patch might have to revisit a previous patch. That's the last thing we want to see. We want to see things come out fresh, smooth, and then at the same time, people that are in the PTS, them giving feedback is a huge way for them and people that are actually playing the game, people that are in the community to shape the game and ensure that things come out as smoothly as possible. I would say that anybody that's being impacted by today's patch, if you feel like you are negatively being impacted by whatever being rebalanced, we'll call it, we need to start having more of, say, an open dialogue. And I keep encouraging people, whether it's Reddit or their forums, which I think are probably the best two ways to kind of go about contacting them and them seeing some of the things that are read or posted and then them actually reading it. Um, I feel like there needs to be other ways to adjust this as opposed to say undo it. We can't just say undo it. We'd have to say boost the base number. We'd have to say, okay, if we're getting debuffed, I'm not going to say nerfed, if we're getting debuffed, will these other, I don't know, will the creatures around us potentially get, debuffed as well? We can't do as much. Can they also not do as much? If they can't be easier to kill, could they kill us less as easily? In terms of like, if I see a level 100 bear running straight at me and it's only a few like yards away, well, if I need to take a lot more shots at it to kill it, and it can still pretty much, one or two hit me, can we make it where it doesn't do as much damage? Or at least can, I don't know, I feel like sometimes I fear more of the Yaoguais than I do the Death Claws in the game, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Can we readjust things? Can we be more constructive in terms of our criticism and not just say undo it, not just say okay, now I can't do as much DPS, and now what am I going to do? We have to kind of be open-minded, and I'm always interested in figuring out what people are using for their builds and how we can kind of, I don't know, bridge the gap of DPS and survivability in the game. I'm going to test some of this stuff out. Let's see. I'm interested in how the community responds to this, whether it's people that are in-game, mid-game, and even one of the camp fixes that I mentioned earlier. I'm curious to know if anything was affected to any of the more creative members of the community. But yeah, that's patch 23.